So this video is on the homework from block number 2, Wednesday, that is dealing with rational equations. So on a problem like this, what you want to do is you want to get rid of all of our denominators. So we want to get rid of the 2x, and we want to get rid of the x plus 1. So you kind of want to think about, well, what would the common denominator be for this? The common denominator would be a 2x and an x plus 1. That's what we're going to times everything by, okay? Also, before I get started, I should give restrictions. So my restrictions are what makes my denominator 0. And if we get any of these as our answer, then that part is not going to be a solution. So for the 2x, x cannot be 0. And for the x plus 1, x cannot be -1. And those are our 2 restrictions. So now I'm going to take everything and multiply it by a 2x and an x plus 1. So I'm going to take 3 over 2x. And I am going to and let me just, I'm going to rewrite this as plus and a negative 2x over x plus 1, okay, equals, and I'm going to give myself some space here to do my multiplication. So here, let me do that. So I'm going to multiply everything here and here, and I'm going to do it to the other side, but let me just write this first, 2x and x plus 1, and over here, again, 2x and x plus 1. And then the rest of that equation was equal -2. And I have to do it to both sides, and I have to do it to every term on both sides. So 2x and x plus 1. And hopefully we should have some things cancel out. So looking at this, it looks like this 2x and this 2x will cancel out. This x plus 1 and this x plus 1 will cancel out. So when I do that, I am going to get my 3 is going to multiply with both of these. So I'm going to get a 3x plus 3. Over here, my 2x is going to multiply with this, which is going to be a -4x squared equal. And on the other side, this right here is going to be a -4x. And that is going to be multiplying by x plus 1. So that's going to give me a -4x squared minus 4x. So now I'm going to solve this. And at first it looks like a quadratic, but what's going to happen is I'm going to add 4x squared. I'm going to add 4x squared, and then those actually cancel out. And so I'm going to be left with 3x plus 3 is equal to -4x. I'm going to get, subtract 3x from both sides. So I'm going to get 3 is equal to, when I subtract 3x, I'm going to get -7x. And then I'm going to divide by -7. So I'm going to get -3/7 is equal to x. And that is neither of my restrictions. Remember, these were my restrictions. X cannot be 0, x cannot be 1. So x equals -3/7 is going to be my answer. So now let's take a look at number 2. So on number 2, I have an m plus 1, and I have an m minus 1, okay? So we're going to be multiplying everything by m plus 1 and m minus 1. But my restrictions, again, are going to be m cannot be -1 for the one I have highlighted in blue, and m cannot be 1 for the one I have highlighted in purple. Okay, so I'm going to have m over, give myself some space here, m over m plus 1. And again, I'm going to be multiplying that by m plus 1, m minus 1. Here, let me do it in a different color so it doesn't blend in with that one over here. Move this over. Okay, So m plus 1, m minus 1. And then I'm going to have my 5 over m minus 1. And again, that's going to be multiplying by m plus 1, m minus 1. And then on the other side, I have equal 1. And that also has to be multiplied by m plus 1, m minus 1. Okay, so that's what I'm multiplying everything by. So now, hopefully, I can get some things to cancel out here. So this m plus 1 and this m plus 1, this m minus 1 and this m minus 1. And I am going to get this m distributing to both of these. So that's going to be an m squared minus m. My 5 distributing to these. So that's going to be a plus 5m plus 5 equal. And the m plus 1, m minus 1, you can do it in a box if you want. And go m plus 1, m minus 1 and work it out. But that answer, that is a difference of 2 squares. If you recognize it, it's going to be an m squared minus 1. But again, you can do it in the box if you need. So now I'm going to minus m squared from both sides. I get negative. And let me clean up some like terms here. So I'm going to have a 4m plus 5. And again, I have an m squared on both sides that are going to cancel out. And I get negative 1. And I'm going to minus 5. So I'm going to get 4m is equal to negative 6. Divide by 4. And I get m is equal to negative 6 over 4. Or negative 3 halves. And that is not either of my restrictions, which were 1 and negative 1. So that's my answer. Okay, so let's take a look at number 3. Okay, so on number 3, I have to do an extra little step here, okay, with my denominators, okay? So I've got this one, which is a trinomial that should be factored. This one here, k minus 2, and this one here, k minus 6. Now, when I factor this one here, what multiplies to 12 and adds to negative 8, that's going to be a k minus 2 and a k minus 6. So I'm going to multiply everything by k minus 2 and k minus 6. Now, my restrictions are going to be k cannot equal 2 and k cannot equal 6. Those are my restrictions. So again, I'm going to multiply everything by this. So I'm going to have 4 over k minus 2, k minus 6. And again, that's going to multiply with k minus 2, k minus 6. I'll clean this up in a sec. Equal, and on the other side, I'm giving myself some space in the front. I'm going to take k over k minus 2. And that was going to multiply by k minus 2, k plus 6. I'm just going to move this right here a little bit more. Okay. K plus, not k plus, k minus. I can't just change it. Okay, and then I'm going to have plus 1 over k minus 6. And again, it's going to multiply with, I'm just going to see if I can copy this. Let me copy this. That's going to grab everything. It's going to grab everything here too. Yeah, I'll just rewrite it. Okay, so I'm going to multiply this by k minus 2 and k minus 6. Okay, k minus 2 and k minus 6. So now, hopefully, everything's going to cancel out. So this k minus 2 and this k minus 2 and this k minus 6 and this k minus 6. Here, this k minus 2 with this, and this k minus 6 with this. And so now, when I'm doing this, I'm going to end up with 4 equal. Over here, the k is going to multiply with both of these. So I'm going to get a k squared minus 6k. And and then I'm going to have a plus k minus 2. Okay, so now I am going to get everything on one side, 0 on the other. So I'm going to have a k squared, a minus 5k, and I'm going to subtract my 4, a negative 6. And I'm going to factor this. What multiplies to negative 6 and adds to negative 5? Well, that's going to be a negative 6 and a positive 1. And so that's going to lead to k equals 6 and k equal negative 1. But if I look up here to the top where my restrictions are, I see 6 as a restriction. So that means this one right here, the 6, is not going to be one of my answers. So my answer is going to be just negative 1. Okay, now number 4. Okay, so this one, I am going to have a m minus 1. This m squared minus 1 is factorable. It is a difference of 2 squares. This is going to be an m plus 1 and an m minus 1. So I'm going to multiply everything by both m plus 1 and m minus 1. And that means I'm going to have a restriction of m cannot be negative 1 and m cannot be 1. Okay, so now I'm going to have 2m over m minus 1. And I'm going to be timesing that by m plus 1, m minus 1. Okay. And then I'm going to have a 5 minus m, and I'm going to put that in parentheses. And again, this was an m plus 1, m minus 1. And that is going to be multiplied by m plus 1, m minus 1. And then on the other side of the equal, I had an equal 1. And that also has to be multiplied by m plus 1, m minus 1. Okay, and let's see what can cancel out. So when I'm doing this m minus 1 and this m minus 1, m plus 1, m plus 1, m minus 1, m minus 1. And I am going to be left with 2m squared plus 2m, with this multiplying with this and this. And then plus m minus 5 equals. And then over here, this right here is again m squared minus 1 and when I multiply that out. So quadratic, get everything on one side, 0 on the other. So I'm going to subtract my n squared, I get n squared. I'm going to combine my m's, I get a 3m. Now I have a minus 5, but I have a minus 1 on the other side. When I add 1, I'm going to get a negative 4 equals 0. And so what multiplies to negative 4 and adds to 3? A positive 4 and a negative 1. And so I get m is equal to negative 4 and m is equal to 1. But again, we had a restriction that our x cannot be a 1. So this one's not going to be an answer. So just m equal negative 4. And let's take a look at 5 and 6. Okay, so on number 5, I need to get rid of an x, a 3x, and a 5. I need to get rid of all of those. So I want something that's going to get rid of an x, a 3x, and a 5. And that's going to be 15x. Now, in terms of restrictions, x cannot be 0. It's going to do it so it's not faint. X cannot be 0. Okay, that's my restriction. So I'm going to have 4 over x, and I'm going to multiply that with 15x. I'm going to have plus a negative 7 over 3x is how I'm going to write that. And that is going to be times by a 15x equal 2 over 5, and that's going to be multiplied by a 15x. And now I'm going to simplify. And so this x with this x, 3x goes into 15x 5 times. 5 goes into 15x 3x times. Let me write that a little better. Okay, so again, that is a 5. And over here, this is going to be a 3x. So now when I do that math, 15 times this is going to be 60. Over here, these are going to multiply, get a negative 35 equals 6x. So I'm going to get a 25 is equal to 6x, divide by 6. So I'm going to get x equal 25 over 6. And that is not equal to 0. So that's my answer. And the last one. So on the last one, I'm going to factor a 2 from here. Let me use a little thinner. Okay, so I'm going to factor a 2 from here, and I get a p minus 2. Here I have a p minus 2. Here, this is a difference of 2 squares, and that is going to be a p plus 2 and a p minus 2. So in terms of my restrictions, p cannot be 2, and p cannot be negative 2. Those are going to be my restrictions. Now, if we're looking at this, let me just rewrite this real quick. This is 6 over 2 times p minus 2 plus 4 over p minus 2 is equal to 1 over p plus 2 p minus 2. Now, if you're trying to figure out what to multiply everything by, we're going to need a p plus 2, a p minus 2, and you might think we need a 2 because of the 2 in the first fraction, but that 2 can actually cancel with this and give us a 3 right away. So you don't need to multiply by that 2. So we're going to multiply everything by p plus 2, p minus 2. So p plus 2, p minus 2. Again, over here, p plus 2, p. I'm going to move the 4 over a little bit. Okay. So I'm multiplying this by p plus 2, p minus 2, and this by p plus 2, p minus 2. And so I can have here this p minus 2 and p minus 2, this p minus 2 and p minus 2, here the p minus 2s and the p plus 2s. So I am going to get, from my first fraction, the 3 is going to be timesing with the 2 and the p. Let me just shrink this a little bit. And so I'm going to get 3p plus 6. And then here the 4 is going to multiply with both of those. So I'm going to get 4p plus 8. And the other side equals 1. So this is going to be 7p plus 14 equals 1. 7p equals a negative 13. And p equals a negative 13 over 7. And again, that's not one of my restrictions. So that's my answer. And hopefully that helps.